Welcome, everyone. After successfully running the Leaders Cafe in India, we are excited to inaugurate the Leaders Cafe in Australia today. This is a forum where we invite industry thought leaders to share current business trends and any insights on enhancing leadership skills and professional skills in organizations. So, today we're going to jump right into the topic of women leaders breaking barriers in corporate Australia. But before that, I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we meet today. I would like to pay my respects to elders past and present. Now, the reason we picked this up as our first topic in Australia is because women still remain underrepresented in all key decision making roles across almost all industries in Australia. We're only comprising 22% of CEOs, 34% of board members, and only 18% of board chairs. Within this, culturally diverse women have an abyssal representation. Out of 46% of board directors across Australia, only 5% of them are actually women from diverse backgrounds. So, today in our Leaders Cafe live series, we're incredibly excited to welcome a guest speaker who came to Australia as a young refugee and broke several shackles to emerge as a leader in the typically male dominated banking industry. We are speaking with Ana Marinkovic, Executive General Manager, Small Business Bank at NAB. In her current role, her team looks after the financial needs of 500,000 businesses across Australia through a suite of products and services to support every stage of a business's journey. Anna is a passionate advocate for diversity, inclusion, and equality of opportunity and believes in hard work, broad engagement, and curiosity as foundations to authentic leadership. She's also an advisory board member for the brilliant Women Global Organization, advocating for diversity and inclusion in Australia internationally. So I'm very excited to have you on board, Anna. Welcome to our Leaders Cafe.
Thank you very much, Sandra, and thank you for this invitation. I feel privileged to have this time with you and to share some of my experiences.
Beautiful. Anna, firstly, I want to talk about what attracted me to getting you here on board. Somewhere in your story, I saw a little bit of my story, and I'm sure a little bit of many other migrant, culturally diverse women who are here in this beautiful country wanting to make a mark for themselves, wanting to start again. And I felt your story, your journey could be an inspiration for many of us who are somewhere in that part, whether we're in the beginning of that journey or some in the middle. Would love to hear your incredible story that started off, as a refugee leaving Serbia at the age of 12 and
Yes.
now leading a bank in Australia. Can you share some of the highlights that brought you the way you are today?
Look, Sandra, I don't think that my experience is particularly unique because I have come across so many people that have had to leave their countries for various reasons. And, my childhood was absolutely wonderful. And then it wasn't. It changed in a flash from utmost security to bomb shelters, bunkers. I left home when I was 12 years old. I did not see my parents again well into my adulthood. But I think what that experience has taught me more than anything is really to think about things that you attach yourself, the identity that you build as a result. Um, it's taught me that most things in life are really transient. Things like titles, positions, material possessions, standing in the society, it's here 1 minute and it's gone the next. But what is not transient is the resilience that you build. What is not transient is the choices that you make about how you spend your time, the impact that you have, and the duty that you've got to help perhaps someone else reach the lengths that they wouldn't be able to reach on their own. It has also taught me that it's okay not to belong. It's okay to be different, to be true to yourself, because authenticity really matters. And it matters in corporate life just as it does in our personal experiences. So authenticity is a glue to trust and loyalty. So a lot of learnings in that journey over the past couple of decades.
Beautiful. Anna, thank you for sharing it. And one thing that resonated a lot with me, it was initially a little bit of a shock, but that resonated with me is the line that you say, it's okay not to belong. And here we talk a lot, especially in organizations, about belonging as a foundation of actually being true inclusive and getting people to feel safe to speak. And here I'm listening to you as a woman leader who's traveled the mile and said, you know what, it's not okay to belong. My first reaction to that was liberating. I felt free hearing that word, that it's okay not to belong. Would you like to share a little bit more about what you mean by that?
Yes, I've had very different reactions to that. But look, I keep saying that I have mastered the art of not belonging and that I am completely okay with it. That it's about accepting that outward difference. And I accept that most people I encounter in boardrooms did not spend their childhood in bomb shelters. And that as a result of that, I may see things a little bit differently. You know, my accent and the way I speak and the fact that I think in another language will never go away. And but that in itself, brands your identity a lot more than your CV does when you first meet someone. The moment you open your mouth, there is a cultural identity around you that you can't escape. You know, I've been told many things that I'm too fashionable, too assertive, too honest. It's been suggested many a time that I should take my husband's surname, that I should get some elocution classes and try to soften the accent. I've been, told that it would be a good idea to perhaps develop a taste for wine and because it's a bit strange and weird that you don't drink alcohol at functions. I've been told that I was too conservative, sometimes, sprinkled with a bit of emotional. So at the end of the day, all those things are labels, labels, labels. And, over time, these things stop having an impact. I am as thirsty as ever for feedback on my work, my strategy execution, the way I think, my leadership, opportunities to improve. But I actually no longer blink at all the other noise. Probably a survival tactic,
Uh-huh.
but it's serving me quite well now.
Beautiful. Sometimes this reminds me often when I speak to clients and coaches, is when there's so many stories happening in your head, and when you're comparing
Mm.
yourself to others, whether you're trying to belong or whether you're trying to be a better leader or emulate somebody. I often say, when you go to the horse races, you often see horses with blinders on,
Yeah,
and they're the fastest things there in the stadium. So you need those blinders to focus on
mm,
your goal and not hear the voices. And sometimes the voices are inside, and sometimes outside voices out. So I found that pretty liberating. Saying, let's not get into the chatter of what do I need to do to belong, but get into the space of what can I do to make an impact, and just
exactly.
go straight in that direction. Everything will fall in place.
Exactly.
And that's an interesting and very powerful narrative for somebody who feels the outside and you're getting in. But now I also want to talk about the environment in reality.
Hmm.
As a woman from a multicultural
Hmm.
background, I've faced uh, various cultural challenges, from
Hmm.
people checking in, is that your real name because it's not matching your color, to my accent, and at times being the only multicultural woman in a leadership forum, being asked by some to, hey, I think you need to hire whites in your sales team to represent your
Hmm.
majority stakeholders. So while I am doing my own internal battle of, no, I do want to continue with what I believe in and continue pushing out there, there are also articles like HRD recently talked about discrimination based on accents, where career opportunities are missed by equally qualified candidates with non-standard accents and even more pronounced for women. Another article in Financial Review that talks about how job seekers in Australia with ethnic names are 57% less likely to be considered for leadership roles. What do you feel, even if it's unconscious,
Yeah.
there still seems to be a systemic discrimination by organizations against diverse professionals? What are your thoughts?
Yes, there are quite a few things in there to unpack. But look, the reality is that no Australian corporate institution represents the diversity of their customer base in its upper management echelons or indeed at the board level. So that's the reality. But there is also something that I've come across, particularly in this role where, my teams look after some over 1 million small businesses across Australia. And, the customer base also expects a certain executive prototype. And,
Mm,
I regularly deal with the reality of being an ethnic banker right in the middle of this most masculine, monolithic, and culturally homogenous industry on the planet. But I get it from our customers as well, not just in the workplace, which tells me that that unconscious bias issue is much more broadly spread. I've spoken about an anecdote where a customer recently asked me about how if I'm feeling conflicted about the conflict in Ukraine, and I said, no, I do not. Are you? And he was really taken aback and said, no, I was just thinking that you are from that part of the world, so you may be finding it difficult. And I said, no, number one, I'm not conflicted. I've got my views on it. And number two, I'm neither Ukrainian nor Russian. In fact, nowhere close to those two countries. But, the perception is that probably because of the way I look or speak or the accent that I have, that, they've already placed you in a certain framework.
yeah.
Um, then recently, I received feedback from a customer on the newsletter I send out to our small business community each month about the fact that the content of the newsletter is great, but can I please change the sender name from Ana Marinkovic, as it sounds like an offer from a Russian mail order service, and people may overlook such great content as a result. So again, those biases are really, really deeply ingrained, and it won't shift with one Anna or Sandra proving that they are not on the lookout for a husband via email. I really think this requires that collective effort, multiple voices, ongoing attention, and a real focus on ensuring that people that are in position of power and people that can affect change, that they do take it seriously.
Yeah, and I agree with you. It'll take more than conversations, and I'm glad you've also mentioned the past that you're conscious about picking up mentees who are from a diverse background so that you can give back and give them the support that they need to look at. And while we're doing that, it, there are also recent trends that and news around DEI falling favor from diversity roles being slashed off in the recent past, especially driven by the US. Do you feel this is likely to adversely impact diversity agendas in organizations? What's the situation right now in corporate Australia in making inclusion real?
Look, I think there are absolutely very positive steps forward that are And that inclusion and diversity, and when I talk about diversity being a lot more than a male female paradigm, I feel that there is absolutely significant progress being made, and that organizations are absolutely starting to think of it in terms of it not being a nice something that we want to have. It's something that we need to have, and we need to have it for a range of reasons. One is, from a social accountability perspective, but also from ensuring that we can really well identify with our customer base and be able to deliver much better commercial outcomes as well. So I absolutely think that there is progress, but do I think that it is happening as quickly as it needs to happen, particularly in a country that is as multicultural as Australia? No, I do not. And I think that there are other agenda items that uh, are potentially seen more important, and hence why the progress is not as material as it needs to be.
Mhm. I often also see when you're talking about this case as women being champions of diversity, equity, inclusion. They're either the heads, leaders, running these forums. Where do you see male allyship come into this picture? If I could put that in a question, what would you recommend, say, senior male colleagues to do in organizations to support more inclusivity?
Look, I think any, and I have made a conscious choice around not looking at people through the prism of male or female or their cultural heritage, the color of their skin. I feel that it is absolutely everyone's accountability and responsibility to promote meritocracy and uplift talented, hardworking, and capable people, regardless of their gender and regardless of their cultural or socioeconomic background. So my view there is that men as well as women have equal accountability and responsibility in that space as well. I mean, when I reflect about my own career, I would actually to go as far as to say that in terms of support, advice, mentorship, and sponsorship, I probably had stronger support from some of my male colleagues, leaders, and mentors than I did from women. And I think that women supporting women can sometimes be quite an uncomfortable topic, because we talk a lot about men supporting women, but there is
Mhm,
that undercurrent there also about ensuring that women do not necessarily compete with
uh-huh,
other women, but see that um, the opportunity and the prism, and see through the prism of supporting each other rather than competing, as being really important
mhm.
for this agenda.
Uh-huh. That's an interesting point you made, and I think that's an answer to the question I asked. Is you've had some great mentors who were incidentally men who supported you, and that's probably one way we can spread allyship in this. And also you picked up a point which I've heard a few years ago, but in the last few years I've seen the shift happen on women supporting women, or at least the shift
Mhm.
is starting. And I'm pretty happy looking at that shift. What else can we do to support each other besides, mentoring, coaching? What else can we do to together rise in this situation?
Look, a while back, I came across this quote, which I really, really agree with. And it said that women are over mentored and under promoted. So
Yeah.
women are over mentored and under promoted. And that really resonated with me, because when you look at it quite objectively, the challenge is actually not finding a mentor.
Right.
The challenge is demonstrating to the system that you're operating, that you are worthy of broader responsibility, bigger role of that promotion. So I
Mm-hmm.
think it's really important that we don't overtly focus on mentorship, but
Mm-hmm.
on building those key critical experiences that will get you there and pave the road. You know, of course, having a great sounding board and having someone to guide you through that journey is super important. But
Mm-hmm.
on its own, mentoring is not going to be a deciding factor on your career.
Absolutely. And that's where, and that I've heard that quote as well. It's more about shifting from mentorship to
Yes,
sponsorship and opening doors and giving women opportunities to take risks and do that
exactly.
work. I've also heard you in your interviews talk about you being lucky in getting mentors and supporters. And often, and that this is my story about luck is there is
Mhm.
work that happens to get lucky. You just don't get lucky. You've done something, whether consciously or unconsciously, to get luck fall into your lap. So if you want to reflect back and all the mentorship opportunities that you feel grateful for, what did you do at that time, and maybe it was unconscious, for you to get those mentors for yourself?
Look, I always, by virtue of being different, by virtue of coming from a very different context, into Australian corporate world, on in a banking graduate program 20 years ago, I always thought that the best way to demonstrate your worth is through your results and through the impact that you can have on, on the work that you do and the quality that you deliver. And look, uh, I think working super hard and working probably harder than others without that extra identity burden meant that, I did get opportunities that um, some others perhaps did not come across. So, um, the hard work and the results absolutely
Mm,
um, gave me access to a wide variety of people, um, and I was I was quite confident in being able to go and ask for help to um, I have insatiable thirst for learning and continuous improvement, and I think that your actions sometimes speak louder than your words, and my luck was created through, I think, those genuine efforts to make a difference, to do a better job tomorrow than I did today. And people do notice,
yeah,
and people do want to help fundamentally. So it's just about being really in tune with with how are you contributing to their success, and then what can you do to ask for help and advice when it's really needed. It's
yeah,
about earning the right. I
yeah.
do believe in earning the right.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, that is absolutely the first step to getting any kind of mentorship and support. It's the foundation. Otherwise, it's difficult to get one.
Yes.
This has been a particular soft point for me, especially the transition I made. So I made this transition bang in the middle of my professional life. So I didn't come here as a child. I came here after establishing a very successful career back home in India, where I had, I've been coaching clients and organizations that were my wish list. And I was at a place where I didn't have to get feedback from anyone. I just had people working with me, to a sudden shift in Australia where you're nobody and you
Yep.
have to start all over again in your middle age, and then you need to question yourself. And I want to make a point here in terms of it's not about re-engineering yourself, because some part of you will always be. So if you're an introvert, you're shy, whatever, that remains you. I'm not asking you to remove that aspect. but definitely redesign yourself. Because after coming here, I had to go out and ask people for feedback. I had to get into the uncomfortable zone where people were giving me feedback as if I had zero experience, and I had to receive it with grace and take that on and ship, because I had to redesign the way I coach, the way I approach issues. And if you don't have that open mindset, um, to adapt and change, it gets very difficult to find those mentors. And yes, going out asking for mentorship is something that I have never done in my previous life. In my new life, I had to, get out of the zone and say, nobody's going to come to you. You have to go and seek support. And very often people say yes, very often. If you,
Absolutely. Agree
if
with
you
that.
they will say yes.
Mhm.
But it's that first step about going and asking is sometimes can be difficult. And that's how I feel I worked on how do you get your sponsors? How do you get mentorship? Is just put yourself in those situations and ask for support. And these are some internal obstacles that we come across. One of them being the Cinderella complex that we mentioned the other day. I just do good work. Somebody will see me and pick me up, and I'll get my prince and I'll get my seat at the table, which is not true. What do you think about the Cinderella complex that some of us might have, and how do you break that?
Probably a little bit difficult for me to identify with that one because it hasn't really been an issue for me because from day one, I was always an outsider. So when you kind of have that label on you, you actually, you try to fit in. You're trying to have an impact. You're trying to find your place in the world, and you're kind of a bit too worried. You don't end up being too worried about whether you deserve the job you're in at a technical level.
Right.
um, Look, I think the risk there with Cinderella complex is, or imposter syndrome, however you want to call it, is you face a real chance of self sabotage, and you have to be really, really careful to ensure that you look at every situation that you're in a very rational manner, and you know and if you're carrying that burden of disadvantage already in your life, don't dial it even further by adding to it through self-doubt, would be my piece of advice.
Brilliant example. Yeah, it's don't put yourself in that cage firstly. um, Otherwise you'll always have that cage to
Exactly.
be from, and nobody outside can get you out unless you do that on your own. um, I often so Most part of my work is I'm blessed to work with women leaders who do fantastically well in organizations, and I work with them to unleash their potential. And very often I hear about this double bind dilemma, which is either we're too soft or we're too aggressive. And if you're too aggressive, you're seen as somebody that needs to soften down in our coaching, or we are too soft and we need to speak up. And I often get these goals to work on, like how do I tone down my aggressiveness? Because this is a feedback I've got formally from organization. And none of my male leaders come up with that goal. So nobody gets feedback on them to tone out their assertiveness in the coaching goals. You being somebody who is assertive, quite vocal and expressive of what you view, have you come across feedback given to you that you're too assertive, which is bordering aggressive, tone that down? How does anyone handle a double bind dilemma?
Again, I think everyone needs to be super conscious about how you come across, how are you stylistically showing up. But
Mhm.
if your aim is to try to win the battle between striking a balance between us version of assertiveness that is not too aggressive, but at the same time, you're speaking up, but in a way that is not terribly polarizing, etc., etc. I genuinely think that's a losing battle.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, I've been on the receiving end of feedback from you're too quiet and you don't speak up enough to, you speak up too much and it's not. It's not conducive to bringing everyone on the journey. Like it's such a broad spectrum of what people think and how people feel. So
Mm-hmm.
my way of dealing with that is that you don't necessarily. It's not about you being liked. It's not about you being everything to everyone. It's about you being respected. It's about you doing the right thing. It's about you leading with integrity and leading in a way that does not compromise your values. And it's about you leading with authenticity. And at the end of the day, being able to look yourself in the mirror and to like what you see back.
The man behind the woman, the mirror. I would say the woman behind the mirror. It's the only honest feedback you'll get at the end of the day that you've done your
Correct.
best.
Who do you need to thank and who do you need to apologize to after
Yeah,
the day you've had?
yeah, yeah. Talking about after the day we have, I want to come back to the topic balancing work life. How do you manage children, careers, burnouts, personal passions? Are there any strategies, any insights, tips you have for us?
Look, this is another controversial one for me because I actually don't believe and have never believed in work life balance. I believe in doing what suits you, your
Mm-hmm.
personal circumstances, what suits your family, and doing it with no apology. I'm very open about the fact that I have always loved my jobs and my career has been at the center of a lot of my life to date. That doesn't mean that I love my family any less. All it means is that the time that we spend together is focused on quality interactions. We enjoy the opportunities we have to learn together. We explore the world and we enjoy our extended network of family and friends.
Mm-hmm.
And balance to me is when you and your loved ones are happy with the life choices that you have made, continue to make.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the only balance that I strive for.
Yeah, yeah. Absolutely. Going back again inside work, when we talk about balance, first comes from what are the stories you're telling and you being okay with those choices. Some days I'm just a workaholic, some days I'm just with my family. I think the question and challenges that comes from often professionals, and I just don't want to say women professionals because now we have a lot of um, different genders taking on the roles of homemakers and supporting children as well. It's when they seem to feel they're in conflict with the organization, and now this work from home tide is coming on where people are encouraged to go back to work and the changing lifestyles. How does one communicate that balance with work as well? And I know you talked about authenticity. Is there anything in that authenticity that we can use as tools to communicate that balance with our colleagues or leaders so that we feel balanced in life too?
Look, I think it is really important that people should strive, and it's not always possible, of course, but you should always strive to be in employment that does not cause negative feelings about on a Sunday about a Monday coming up. So we're all, at least, we're super fortunate in Australia where unemployment is very low and, people have opportunities to choose. And you have the power to choose, the environment that you want to work in and the leaders that you want to work for and to be in a space that that motivates you rather than demotivates you. So I think that the accountability and responsibility for those choices come down to an individual. And I wouldn't work in an environment that does not allow me to be my authentic self. And if people feel that the values of the organization do not align with their own values, well, control the controllables
Yeah.
and lead by example so that you can make things better. But if they are fundamentally at conflict with who you are, then it
Mm.
might be the time to think about a different organization.
Yeah, yeah. I think the key word is control the controllables. There'll never be a moment where you can control everything in your life. That's the time we need to look at what decisions we need to make and be okay with them.
Exactly. Super important to do that.
Yeah. Can be tough, but sometimes, I've often seen a simple page, divide that into half, cost and price to that cost. Sometimes can be as simple as at least getting that out of your head and getting clarity on, okay, this is a decision I need to make and not get lost in my
Look,
thoughts.
you do not want to end up being trapped in the prison of your own making.
Yeah,
And it's just important to always remember that you have a choice.
yeah, yeah. True. A
And
choice of doing,
you're accountable for that choice.
yeah. And doing nothing is also a choice that we should know.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, doing nothing and being unhappy about that is a very it's a very conscious choice.
True, true. Okay, I'm seeing some interesting comments, and I do want to take some space for those questions. So I'm quickly going to wrap up with a few rapid fire
Sure.
questions, if you're okay, Anna.
Certainly.
Um, mm, so this is my favorite question that comes up because it's actually I love reading. So I want to know what people are reading and what's their favorite book. So what would you recommend as a good book for us to read?
Look, I'm a prolific reader. My favorite books tend to be biographies, as you learn that even those people that have achieved extraordinary heights in terms of their professional life, or indeed their personal life, have had to climb really, really steep and challenging roads. So um, there are not a lot of biographies out there that I haven't had an opportunity to read and enjoy.
Which one is your favorite?
Probably the biography of Otto von Bismarck, who unified the Prussian states into what is today known as Germany,
Uh-huh.
and just the life story, the tenacity, dealing with extraordinary political complexity, the impact that it has had on Europe ever since, the factors that played into First World War and Second World War. Um, I, I I find that he is a character that has had such a huge impact on humanity and how we see democracy in the modern world. And those are the kinds of characters that I love exploring and learning about, because then they're not always super positive, or seeing them through a negative lens. It's more about understanding human condition and human context and the
Psycho-
choices people make.
Yeah, yeah. Psychology as well. Beautiful.
Correct.
I'm sure my husband's taken a note because he loves biographies. That's his favorite genre. So I'm sure he's taking
Yes.
that for himself. One woman role model that you look up to and why?
Oh, look, it's always been my grandmother. Unfortunately, she's no longer with us, but she's the woman that taught me the importance of independence and the importance of education.
Beautiful. It's lovely when it comes from home, right? You grow up in
Yes,
imbibing those
yes.
qualities of beautiful women. How would your family describe you and how would your colleagues describe you in one word?
The kids would say the strictest mum that they know. Husband would say you need to take more time off and go to Italy or Spain on holidays. And I think colleagues and my teams would say someone that's a transformational leader,
Ah,
someone that
beautiful.
loves to challenge the status quo.
Yeah. And what would Anna say?
Look, I love building highly engaged, effective teams, having impact and seeing, that what little actions we do that can have big impact on people's lives. And that's why I love the customer segment that I work in, small business, and the impact that decisions that my teams make every day, the impact that has on so many families across Australia.
Beautiful. So your team's got it right. Transformative leader in one word. Okay.
Thank you.
Lastly, what's the mantra you live by?
Master the art of not belonging.
Ah, I love that. And it's liberating. Ending it with that. All right, it's been so engaging speaking to Anna. I'd love to kind of continue having this conversation. There's so many threads I resonate with. I see some stories that have similar parts. But now I want to take this opportunity to pick up some questions from the audience as well. By the way, I'm surprised by people who've come from many places in the world. So we have people from Vietnam, we have people from India, we have people from Malaysia, we have people, quite a few people from Sydney, Australia. We've got people from Istanbul, from Montreal, Canada. That's going to be really early morning for somebody. Wow. Thank you, everyone, for joining in. You've exceeded my expectations. We were looking more from an Asia centricity, but I'm so glad. Good evening from Canada. Thank you so much for joining in. Now I'm going to pick up, I think Jeff's question was the first question I saw. Jeff Fullick, thank you for being there. What he mentioned, Anna, is as people, we need to be curious and not judgmental. Why do we need to confirm when we want people to bring diversity and different ways of thinking?
Yeah, so as I said, master the art of not belonging is my mantra. I believe that diversity of experiences, thinking, cultural perspective, of different socioeconomic experiences, different educational um, experiences, and technical expertise is what delivers a successful, vibrant, and forward moving culture. So I do not believe that it that homogeny in any shape is
Yeah,
the best way forward, and um, so that's always been my
yourself.
way of thinking. And
Beautiful.
but you also need to make sure when you say that, you also need to make sure that your actions absolutely reflect that
Yeah.
belief. So who do you hire? Who do you fire? Who do you
Mhm.
promote? Who do you mentor? Who do you sponsor? All of that needs
Yeah.
to be aligned to building a diverse culture and giving people a chance.
Yeah. Who do you hang out with? Sometimes we don't realize that. That
That's
gives a
right.
lot of message out. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Beautiful. There's a question from Tarana Mdova. She says, "What does Anna think about the role of women in business world in Asian countries?"
It's interesting. So I come from Eastern Europe, and
Mm,
um, and I come from the context of where female participation in workforce, particularly during communism, was very important, and women were expected to work and to be promoted, and to have a very strong voice. I am also seeing that in parts of Asia as well. I would actually say that Australia is probably a little bit more traditional in
mm,
terms of the role of women in the society, whereas I've noticed, at least in the countries where I have had some exposure, and I've had a number of teams in India as well, over time, that women are absolutely taking the mantle and are, very visible and very effective
Yes.
leaders, balancing home and work life incredibly well, and could be used as an example for the rest of the world, really.
Yeah, I agree. There's a lot of movement happening in Asia for women
Yes,
leaders. There's a lot of startups being owned by women, so there is a
exactly.
movement happening over there. There is Kapila Pandey who said there's still a tremendous amount of discrimination against climbing the ladder in Asian countries because there's an undertone of favors being done to get where they've gone. As a woman, how do you tune out such noises, voices which indicate you got there because of a quota had to be filled, or was it because of hard work involved in your promotion?
Look, I am not a big fan of quotas for that reason. My belief is that at the end of the day, you need to hire people based on meritocracy. But the
Mhm.
problem with that is, well, then we need to create a system that ensures that women have the same opportunities to learn, develop, and get promoted as men do.
Yeah,
So I think it's really important that your work that you have a CV and a track record and reputation of brilliant performance,
mhm.
and that you're also really confident about that and that you can speak to it. Like your elevator pitch needs to be very punchy and it needs to come from lived experience rather than a sense of needing to justify why are you where you are.
Yeah, yeah. I would go with what you said about it's okay not to belong. So don't hear about quota, just do your work, get the position. This is not something that you want to be even focusing, just bringing you down. If you made
Exactly.
it, yeah. I know we're slightly ahead of time. There's one last question, if you're
Of
okay to
course, no
take
problem.
it. It's from Advocate G Singh. He asks, how do we change from mentorship to sponsorship? There's been a couple of other questions. Karthik George also asked that. How do we change from mentorship to sponsorship in organizations?
Yeah, that it's that's a it's such an important nuance between mentorship and sponsorship, right? I have lost count of the number of people that have asked me to be their mentor and have um, treated that interaction on a quite a transactional basis and came in asking a few questions, setting up a coffee catch up, and then, not necessarily following up or demonstrating a level of commitment towards that development. I think the quickest way to turn someone from a mentor into a sponsor is to demonstrate that you're getting the value out of that interaction, that you're putting effort into developing yourself, that you're taking the feedback on board and adjusting your style, focusing on continuous improvement, because then the other person automatically starts having a vested interest in you and your success. Um, when I see people that are, uh, that they're coming to you with for the right reasons, that it's coming out of desire to be better and do better for your colleagues and your customers, you win people over pretty quickly.
Yeah.
It needs to be selfless. It needs to be authentic. It needs to be true. And there needs to be a connection as well. Like the values need to align. And, if that doesn't work with one person, you try with another and another and another until you find someone whose approach, ways of thinking and working really resonate with you.
Yeah, yeah. I agree with you, and I love the point that you said is it will bring value to that a person as well, the sponsor. Very often I say when you go and ask for sponsorship, also think from a lens of what you can give back to the sponsor. And you may not be in a leadership position to do anything, but there are always different ways, your skills, your support, um, the opportunities that you can create. So it should be a two-way street somewhere so that the sponsors also more excited and eager to help support you in this whole process. All right, Anna, this has been such a beautiful discussion. One of my biggest takeaways from this conversation with you, and I know in the prep it was belonging. It's okay not to belong. In today's conversation, it's not, this is not exactly what you said, but I'm summarizing. It's not the identity we are born with, it's the identity we make. So forget your color, your background, your education, your religion, the environment you are in. It's a choice you have to create that identity. And that's the
Leaders are not born. Leaders are made, and they're made by their actions and the actions around them every single day.
yeah. On that note, wishing all of you a wonderful journey in discovering your identity and creating that identity and then dancing with it. Thank you once again, Anna, for spending that time and sharing completely authentically your thoughts and your messages. There's some beautiful comments that have come for you as well on chat. We'll share that with you separately. It'll
Thank
be
you. Thank you kindly. Thank you so much, Sandra, for this opportunity. And if anyone's even taken um, a little bit of advice or help or a helpful word or two, that's been a success.
that's your way of giving forward.
Thank
Beautiful.
you. Thank you,
Thank
Sandra.
you. And thank you, everyone, for joining us and for the rich comments. I hope you've all been able to take some insights for yourself. Tune in again in a couple of weeks. We'll be coming back with something on first time managers. Good day, everyone. Have a wonderful day. And we all wishing Matildas good luck for today's match.
Unless you're English.
Yes. All right. Take care. Bye bye.